In this video, I'll show you how I did the Witch King's crown. So I 3D printed the Witch King's crown. I had to slice it in multiple pieces so it could fit on my 3D printer. And I'll be sharing the link towards where I got the pattern from in the description of this video. Once all the pieces are printed, it was now to go to the stage of sanding each of those pieces individually. To remove all the printing lines of the Witch King's crown pieces I 3D printed, I basically started with 80 grit sandpaper. Then I moved to 120 grit sandpaper, and then moved towards the 220 grit sandpaper. And then after that, the final layer is I did with 400 sandpaper grit. Now that everything has been sanded down, it's now time to start assembling the crown together. So in the thicker areas of the crown, I use a drill to drill some holes. I then after that used wooden dowels to put in those holes to help connect the crown together to give more structure. I then used adhesive epoxy to connect the pieces together. Once I applied the amount I needed, I then connected the pieces together. To make sure they stay in place, I use painter's tape to keep the pieces together so it can cure for a good 24 hours before I can proceed to the next step of working on the crown. When the curing time was complete, I went and removed all the painter's tape from those areas, and then I went and sanded down all the excess epoxy that was seen before I can proceed to the next step. I then used Bondo for all the seams and any flaws I could find. Once that's all been applied, I then went and sanded down every pieces that I had Bondo on to make sure it went nice and smooth. The reason as well I did it in separate smaller pieces as it was easier to maneuver and work around all of those pieces before it was all assembled. Now it's time to add the other pieces to build the crown. So in the next few clips you'll see here is you'll see me doing the same steps I did previously, but to rest of the crown as it's being assembled. I then use some filler primer all across the crown to make sure all the finer areas are sealed and also to make sure there's no other flaws. You can see I noticed a few areas had some minor flaws areas, so I went and added more Bondo to those areas and redo the same steps again of going through it and start sanding them down in all those areas as well. I then went and added more filler primer to make sure everything is now properly sealed, and as you can see, the crown looks so smooth and nice. Now it's time to paint the crown. So I started with a base of black metallic paint. I then went and used some hammered dark bronze paint to give some texture to the crown. I then went and did a dry brush of the silver acrylic paint onto the crown to give more volume and texture to the crown. I then went and added some little rusting effect around the crown to give it more volume. So I used Scrag Brown as the first base for the rust. To help make sure the rust pops up more and give more of a depth again, is I use some Fiery Dragon Bright to give the little height to show a bit fresher rust areas to the crown. And there you have it. The Witch-King's crown is now complete, and I'm very proud of the outcome as it looks so epic, and I'm very proud.